Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Embrace Fertility podcast / YouTube channel. We are back with another Fertility Expert interview series. And today we have Charlotte Grand of the Fertility Kitchen with us. Charlotte is a registered nutritional therapist, fertility nutritional expert, and creator of the popular Instagram channel, The Fertility Kitchen, where she shares her wholesome, balanced approach alongside delicious, simple, everyday recipes. Charlotte has spent almost 10 years specialising in preconception and fertility, and her private practice supports her clients to transform their health in preparation for conception and pregnancy. Charlotte, welcome.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
And it's so nice having, I love doing these interview series and just opening up and introducing new people to my followers and my listeners. So it's fantastic. So you have some rather exciting news of something that you've been working on for 2 years is now here in this world. Tell us all about it.
Okay, so my book has been published last Thursday, and so I became a traditionally published author, which is very exciting. And here's the book for those on YouTube. And this book is, like you said, it's been something I've been working on for 2 years to bring to everybody. But really, it's been something that I've been brewing since 2015, because that's when I first had the idea for the book. So it's kind of taken that long to bring it to fruition. But it's basically the guide that I would have wanted on my fertility journey. So it gives you fertility nutrition, information and advice, but in a down-to-earth and really practical way. And it really then shows you how to translate that advice into real food and everyday eating. So it's not just a boring kind of text-driven paperback, which is the kind of book that was available when I was trying to conceive. It's full color, there's beautiful recipes, and lots and lots of tips and tricks just telling you how to get your diet in great shape for fertility.
Fantastic. And I love it. One of your latest Instagram posts is my favorite childhood memory is not having to decide what to cook for dinner every day. And I think so many people can relate to that, especially when you want your diet to be really supporting your body and supporting your fertility, and all the thinking that goes into that, and making sure that you're having a balanced diet. And if you're cutting things out, you're ensuring it's balanced. So I think having the recipes makes such a difference, that you know you have a plan, and especially because you are a nutritionist, so you're ensuring this is a balanced diet. Whereas I think sometimes people can I remember when I was going through infertility and my acupuncturist was like, oh, you should cut out deadly nightshades, and I was like, all right, what does that mean? And then it was, peppers, tomatoes, potatoes, pretty much the basis of my diet. She was like, oh, just avoid those. So then I really hadn't got a clue of kind of how to do that in a way that was, in a balanced way. I would say with people, don't ever just make drastic changes to your diet without fully understanding what you're doing. So having the advice of an expert is obviously a fantastic idea. So tell us about your own fertility journey.
Sure. So it's a long time ago now, because I was very fortunate in that I did conceive my boys in the end, and we had IVF, but I'll tell you the backstory around that. So and it was a good so George, my eldest, is now 10. So we started trying to conceive shortly after we got married. So I'd been with my husband since school, and we got married at 25, started trying for a baby at 26. Or I was. He's a bit older than me. And like everyone, we naively assumed it's going to happen immediately, because you decide, right, I want a baby, bam, it's going to happen. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case for us. And I think that kind of mindset stems from school, where it's really drilled into us not to get pregnant. Don't get pregnant. So you come away from school with this opinion that, wow, if the minute I don't use contraception, I'll be pregnant immediately. So yeah, we went through the whole usual kind of going to see our GP and that kind of thing. We had all the tests done and everything was hunky-dory. So I was young, fit and healthy. So was my husband. I had a textbook menstrual cycle. So there was no reason that we found initially that could explain why we weren't conceiving. So, we went through that whole being sent away, keep trying, that kind of thing. Eventually, after some more tests, I had my uterus checked, we had my fallopian tubes checked, we were diagnosed with unexplained infertility. So they couldn't find any reason for our struggle to conceive, and we were referred for IVF. And I say this often, it was a bit of a shock at that point to be referred for IVF when at the time I'd kind of started exploring fertility treatments, and I knew about IUI, and I thought maybe that would be something we would be offered first. So it was a bit of a, IVF is a massive thing, isn't it? And but I got my head around that. And then sort of meanwhile, I had started looking into other things. So the first thing I went and had was acupuncture. And I feel like that's a rite of passage when you're trying to conceive, going for acupuncture or going for reflexology.
Yeah.
And I was in a stressful job. So I was a fashion buyer for a high street retailer. So I used to buy all the bags for a high street retailer. And, it was a great job, like super fun, like, being in fashion was what I'd always wanted. But it was very, very long hours. So I'd be in the office at 7, I'd still be in the morning, 6 or 7 in the morning, and I'd still be there at sort of 7, 8 at night. So it was a long hours and lots of travel. So it was very stressful. So I kind of thought acupuncture is going to help me with stress, and it might help with fertility as well. And the next period I had after having about 3 sessions of acupuncture was completely pain-free, and I'd had years of monthly agony. So the one thing that was off in my cycle was monthly period pain and PMS as well. And that was just such a profound moment for me. I was like, how the hell can needles have this effect? So I started to get interested in Chinese medicine, and more interested. And it just so happened that where I was having treatment was an acupuncture college in Reading, where I was working, and they do a degree there in acupuncture. And my acupuncturist was like, you're so interested in this. He'd lent me loads of books, and he was like, you should really study it. So I thought, well, why not? They did a weekend course. So I signed up for the weekend course, and away I went, and I carried on working at my job and doing the weekend course. So, I'd added in to my already quite busy life a weekend degree. But anyway, I started doing it, did that for a year, and absolutely loved it. Like, just felt like this is, very interesting. So such a logical medicine. And so meanwhile, we were going through our fertility, trying to conceive as well. And we'd been referred for IVF. So I'd been at college for about a year as well as working, and that was when we'd got referred for IVF. So at that point, because it was a degree, and I knew that my studies became really important in the second year of a degree, obviously everything that you do counts towards your final grade. So I decided that I would leave my job and focus on acupuncture and IVF as well. And so I'd started to do other things, like, we got a dog, our fur baby, and I started walking a lot. I was, sleeping well, really started to look after myself, but not taking a huge interest in nutrition at that point, because I was fit and healthy, and I was, aside from the infertility, and I was slim. And I guess, in our culture, slim equates to being healthy in a way, doesn't it? And so I was having regular acupuncture. I started to look at nutrition a bit, how I could support my IVF cycle. And I created this protein smoothie to drink throughout IVF treatment. And actually that smoothie's in my book, because I drank it throughout both of my IVF cycles. And yeah, so I did that. And we were very, very fortunate, and we conceived on our first round of IVF. So we have George from that round, and he's now 10.
Wow.
And then when George was a baby, we sort of thought, we've got to start trying for a sibling very quickly, because we thought it could take forever, because it had taken 3 years to get George. And
you feel
so
that pressure, don't you, that it's never just about a baby, it's about the family that you want. So even when you have your first baby, you're thinking about, what is there going to be a second? Is that possible? What's the age gap going to be? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, the age gap is a big consideration when you struggle with infertility as well, because you kind of, you naturally want that sort of 2-year age gap, don't you? And it, it's not going to happen probably. But we started trying to conceive when George was about 9 months old.
Yeah.
And but we tried for a year and nothing had happened again. And then it was during that sort of gap between having the 2 children that I'd started to look at diet a little bit more, and I cut out sugar, because I used to be such a sugar monster. So I would have Haribo, you know, I loved Haribo, Malwams, Tang Fastics, you name it, I had it. I loved like cereal. I lived on cereal, and you know, when I was working in buying, it was a very easy thing to have, because you just have a box of cereal.
Quick, yeah.
So you'd have that on your desk, and I would just be stuffing down cereal. I'd have like sandwiches for lunch and pasta for dinner, so very standard kind of Western diet. And I had veggies and things, but they weren't like the dominant part of my plate.
It's like when you just like sprinkles, like, here's the food, and then you're like, the one piece of
token veg.
Like, I've got my vegetable. Just the one.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what was I saying? Yeah, so I started to look at diet. Oh, and I cut out sugar. So I thought, right, I'm going to cut out sugar. And from that, I just felt so much better, just generally. So, I mean, a lot of people, the way that most of people eat in the Western world is not great for our blood sugar balance. So we tend to have quite dysregulated blood sugar, where we have peaks and troughs. And you'll notice that in yourself if you, for example, maybe you had cereal for breakfast and then kind of mid-morning you flag a bit, and so you have like a coffee and a biscuit, say, and then that peps you up, and then you're flagging, and by lunchtime comes around, you're pretty hangry, you know, you're kind of getting like, I need the food, and then you stuff down a sandwich, and then that will peak your blood sugar up, and then mid-afternoon you get that 3 p.m. sort of slump where you're like, you know, and so that is a typical blood sugar roller coaster. So when you start to balance your meals a bit more and not eat so much sugar, you tend to have much more even energy levels, much more even appetite as well. So I started noticing like that. I had more energy, wasn't having afternoon slumps and things like that. So I was starting to think, wow, this is, you know, good thing to be doing. And then we had a frozen embryo left from our first cycle with George. So we decided to have that put back on a natural cycle. And I remember it quite well, actually. I was going through my studies still, and it was a bit stressful. Was I going through studies? I must have finished, actually, because when George was a baby, I went into clinic. So I carried on with my studies whilst I had George. And so it was a bit of a stressful time, but anyway, I had it put back on a natural cycle, and unfortunately that didn't work out. And I was still kind of breastfeeding George a little bit as well, and they'd asked me, are you breastfeeding? And I said no. And because you get into this kind of mindset where you just want to go for it and you're following your plan. And the clinic were like, you just need to make sure you're not breastfeeding. And I wasn't taking any medication from the clinic because it was a natural cycle. So I thought, well, he's not going to be getting any of the medication, so that's fine. I can carry on sort of breastfeeding him a little bit. But obviously that really raises your prolactin, which can it can suppress your hormones a little bit. So possibly that was the reason why it didn't work out. And so then we decided to go for a fresh cycle again. And we were very lucky that we got pregnant on that cycle, but then that resulted in a chemical pregnancy. So a few days after positive, I started to bleed. I did another test and it was negative. So that was a bit of a shock. And then we left it about 3 months and had another cycle. And luckily, again, we conceived on that cycle, and that was successful. And we have Alex now as well, who is 7 now. So, compared to a lot of people, my journey wasn't too bad. I work with a lot of women who have to go through so much more than that. So I feel sort of relatively lucky. And then when Alex was a baby, that's when I really started focusing on nutrition. So when pregnant with him, I wasn't having any sugar. And interestingly, with my 2 children, George, the eldest, I had sugar throughout my pregnancy with him. And he is a sugar demon. He just wants it. And he admits it himself. He's like, I love sugar. Whereas Alex, who didn't have any sugar, very limited sugar in the womb, he likes it, but he's not bothered. So he's not drawn to it. So I feel like there's got to be that sort of link there. But yeah, so when Alex was about 3 months old, I cut dairy out of my diet. And I can't remember why I decided to do that, but I just decided to cut it out just to see how I would feel. And it wasn't until about 3 months later that I noticed that I didn't have any asthma anymore. And that was something I'd had since I was 5, and and not horrific asthma. I've never had an attack, but I had daily wheezing and that kind of thing. And I noticed that I wasn't taking my inhaler anymore. And I said to my husband, wow, I don't have asthma anymore. And actually I haven't taken an inhaler since. I don't carry one anymore. I don't have asthma anymore. And all I'd done was cut out dairy. So that was such a profound moment where I just thought that food is very, very powerful. And then one morning I was feeding Alex in the early hours, and I was thinking about everything. I was thinking about my journey. I was thinking about my clients, because by this point I had a thriving fertility acupuncture business. And I was thinking about the kind of things that they told me. I was thinking about my own journey and what would have been useful for me. And that's when the Fertility Kitchen just popped into my head. And it was like at ridiculous o'clock in the morning. And I scrabbled about, found my phone, looked on Instagram, and for the domains and everything, and they were all available. And I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing.
Go.
Yeah, go. I thought this is an incredible name for a cookbook. Like, I thought this cookbook would be amazing. And this name is just, it's so self-explanatory, such a great name. So I registered everything sort of there and then. And that was in 2015. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to educate women on diet, I need to be credible. I need to know what I'm talking about. So I popped Alex in a little baby carrier, took him up to London, and started looking around nutrition courses. And he was like 4. My husband's like, you're mental. But anyway, so that's what I did. I signed up for a 3-year course, and off I went and really studied. And then in the meantime, I set up my Instagram. I started creating recipes, and that was really fun. And I'm such a creative person, like having worked in fashion as well. I miss that creative side. So whilst I was really enjoying working with women and helping them through acupuncture, I was missing that kind of creativity. So creating recipes, photographing them and sharing them to Instagram was really a nice creative outlet. And then it got such a positive response. And then so I carried on studying, I carried on doing that, and then also carried on making changes to my own diet, and my health is completely transformed. So I eat so differently now than I used to eat, and I just feel so good, much better than I did in my 20s. And
because when you make a change and then you really you realize how different you actually feel in your body and your energy levels, and even though it can feel like a big change to make, and you kind of sort of put the F in to turn it into a habit, but there's certain things like I've changed in my diet, and now I'm like, I'd never go back now, because I know that's how so like I eat like chia porridge or porridge in the morning, but then I pretty much have lunch at 11 because I don't like eating that much when I first get up, but my body needs protein by 11, and then I'm like, or more protein by then, and I'm like, and it just suits me. And for so many years my body has told me I need that, but I'd have a snack, and I'd have something that wasn't that healthy to tide me to lunch, and I was like, I can just have lunch at 11. Yeah, that's fine. I run my own company. I'm just going to have my lunch. It's fine.
Yeah, you're in charge. I know we do get set in our ways, don't we, a bit? And also in terms of like what you have for breakfast, because the kind of the standard breakfast that we're kind of led to believe that we will have is eat like toast with jam, which is quite sugary, or porridge maybe with some lots of top, like people might put like honey and loads of fruit and stuff, and again that's fairly sugary breakfast, or cereal. Like, so those are the kind of things that we tend to have for breakfast, when actually who says you can't have leftovers for breakfast? Why can't you have vegetables? And it's kind of a mindset thing. But yeah, it's an interesting, you're the master of what you have and when you have it as well. But yeah, so then what happened after, I was trying to think where I got up to. So I'd had the idea, and then I set up the business, and as soon as I qualified, I started working with nutrition as well, and I did that alongside acupuncture until at the start of the pandemic. So when the pandemic hit, it was a natural kind of end to my acupuncture anyway, because I'd been kind of slowly phasing out. I wasn't taking on new clients, I was just treating the people that I was still had on my books, kind of thing. And so made the transition to fully focus on nutrition. And it was around that time as well that I'd grown my following on Instagram to a point where I felt that I could approach an agent, and I had enough kind of evidence that this was something that people wanted and needed. And so I approached an agent in August 2020. I got signed really quickly, and then we got a book deal in the December, and then the whole of last year was just working on the book. So I had 6 months to write it, which I did. And then after that, there's editing, then there's a photo shoot. So we had a photo shoot of the book, and I had someone, a great food stylist, helping me, but we styled all the food. We made so I cooked all the recipes that you can see in the book. And yeah, we just had a blast that week, actually, just photographing the book, bringing it to life. And then the rest of last year was really spent editing the book, and then it went to print early this year. So it's been a long old process, and now I've got this book, and I'm like, wow, it's very surreal, and also it's been such a long journey to get here as well, but it's great that I'm going to be able to share my wisdom and knowledge with more people, and hopefully help more people, because that's the whole point of it, really, is to make other people's journeys that little bit easier, help them to understand the impact that nutrition and lifestyle can have and what they can do about it, because it's a real source of kind of ownership for me. So that's really important, is that it's a way that you can take ownership at a time that you feel so powerless. And for me, I felt so powerless on my journey, and I'm someone who really likes to take action. So I was able to sort of take that ownership back by focusing on the things I could control, which were my how I nourished my body, how I looked after myself. And I know that other women can do that and see a benefit from it as well. Even if it doesn't necessarily lead to a natural pregnancy, it's just as much about taking back that ownership of your own body.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's like I said, what we eat, what we nourish our bodies with, creates our body. And if we're looking to create new life, so a lot of what I talk about on the podcast is nourishing ourselves. So not just with food and sleep and exercise, obviously the mind thing, but everything we're putting into our bodies or denying our bodies is impacting us. And I think so many people, I think, go down the kind of trying to do a fertility diet, but just cut things out instead of adding things in or swapping things. So I went down the route of cutting out gluten, and I am actually quite severely gluten intolerant. So I'm 15 years on, I'm still gluten free, but I went through stages of doing the deadly nightshades, taking out dairy, doing like the blood sugar diet, where you like check what blood and all these things, and the amount of foods I could eat was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and I was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and I was like, and everyone around me was like, you don't look well. Like, I didn't look fertile, I looked malnourished, basically, because I was cutting out so many things in a bid to really control my diet, but not in a healthy way. And so now I always make sure, like when I'm supporting clients with their mindset, and I'll say, if you're going to go down the really look at nutrition, but ensure you're speaking to a nutritionist and ensure that the diet is right for you, because some people will cut out dairy and they'll feel amazing, and other people will cut out dairy and then really miss it, and their bodies will they'll need it, or they'll need to ensure they're not replacing it with enough of other things. So doing it in a really balanced way is so important.
I was just going to say, like, my approach is definitely on abundance and not deprivation. So it's really about, I don't really like to focus too much on what what you take away. It's more about adding stuff in, because also if you start adding more and more nourishment in, the other stuff tends to fall to the wayside anyway. So, you know, if you get the balance of your meals right and you're adding in lots of healthy fats and protein into your meals, you naturally you're not hungry between meals, so then you're not reaching for
the snacks and the Haribos.
Exactly. And it's about really educating people to get those balances right, but also not demonizing foods as well, because there is a place for things like sweet foods. It's just that it needs to be a small place, really. It's an occasional thing, and we've got very used to having that kind of thing all day every day, when it shouldn't really be that way. You know, it's not that we can't have those foods, it's just that they are an occasional treat.
Yeah, a treat rather than the mainstay of your diet.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the 3 pillars of the Fertility Kitchen.
Okay, cool. So the book is, and my business is really based on these 3 pillars, and they're fertility, food, and life. And fertility is about helping women to personalize their diet. So it goes back to kind of what you said earlier about some people doing well not having dairy, and other people, you know, that their bodies tolerate dairy. So it's really about helping women to work out what's right for them. And it's also focusing on more than just your reproductive system. So when we go to the GP, obviously they need to look at our hormones, and they need to look at our womb and our fallopian tubes. That's obviously want to check that everything's hunky-dory there, and the semen analysis as well. But we don't look at, they forget every other aspect of your health which can have an impact on your fertility. So things like gut health, blood sugar balance, liver detoxification, your thyroid health, and also egg and sperm quality. So those things will all have an impact on your fertility, and they all kind of combine as well. So we can't really look at our body in isolation. You know, we need to look at, you know, say you've got the best diet in the world, but your digestion is off and you're not digesting and absorbing well. It doesn't really matter what you eat then, does it? Because you're not going to be able to extract all of that nutrition from food. So the fertility pillar is really about looking at each aspect of your health and working out if that's an issue for you, if there's anything going on there for you. So for example, if we take the gut, there's a checklist in the book of symptoms that we would look at in terms of gut health. So, you know, are you bloated after eating? Are you do you have constipation or diarrhea? Do you have flatulence? So heartburn, so any kind of gut issues, but also other issues as well. So things like rashes, hives, eczema, sinus issues, all of those can indicate that something's going on with the gut. And also if you have a condition like endometriosis or PCOS or an autoimmune condition, then we want to be looking at the gut. And so in my book, there's a checklist of symptoms for each of these areas. And it's like, does that area apply to me? And then how can we address that through food and through life as well? So the food pillar is about laying the foundations for an optimal fertility diet. So it really, in the book, goes into detail on the macronutrients, what they are, why we need them, why they're important, what foods we can get them from. And then I talk about the balance on a plate. So how I was saying earlier, if you get that balance right within a meal, then you're not going to need to snack, and you're going to be nourishing your body. So the food pillar really helps to build a strong fertility nutrition foundation, and also provide that practical down-to-earth advice that you might not get from other books or other sources. So this is what you need to be eating, and then this is how you eat that. So how do we get that into our diet? So for example, if we're talking about the gut health, and for that person, maybe some fermented foods might be supportive, then in the book, I've got recipes that help you to do that. So there's recipes for sauerkraut, there's a recipe for kimchi, which is another fermented foods. And then I give a list of well, you could add it to soup, you could add it to salad. So it's really like, what's going to be supportive? And then how do we get that into the diet? And then within the food section as well, there's an example of nutritious meal plan. There's my fertility superfoods. that and they're not kind of like the marketing superfoods. They're very much nutrient dense foods that have a lot of bang for their buck, and that they really provide your body with what the raw materials that you need for your fertility and to grow a healthy baby. And then in the food section as well, I talk about my fertility kind of food, what do you call them, habits. So habits that you can start to follow, and also my philosophy as well around eating. So that's the kind of food pillar. And then obviously we've got the recipes as well. So not just in the book, but also on my website and on Instagram, I share lots and lots of recipes. And then the life pillar is lifestyle. And that is so important as well, because it lays the foundation for optimal health, really, because, you know, our health is made up of our lifestyle. So stress, for example, will affect our food choices. It affects our energy, our ability to cope with things. Sleep, if we're not sleeping well, then we might be reaching for foods to keep us going in the day. And also we might be more prone to stress. And then I talk about movement, so moving our bodies, and really that's not about strenuous exercise, it's about bringing movement into your day. And then I talk about environment as well, so how what we're exposed to in the environment may have an impact on our fertility, and what we can do about it again. So I'm not just saying, well, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. I'm saying, like,
how to implement.
These aren't ideal, this is what you can do instead. And then also mindset. So I talk about mindset as well, and that's obviously going to massively affect our fertility journey, because you know, like, for example, on my journey, I kept a gratitude journal, and that was so helpful, because it helped me to really see that even though I was navigating challenging times, there was still so much in my life that I could be grateful for. So it's things like that, and that is, I'd say, brilliant tool for anyone to do. And you don't even have to write it down. It's just a ritual of maybe before you go to bed, lying there and thinking, what 3 things am I grateful for today? And it doesn't have to be massive either. It could be, well, the sun was shining and it was, you know, it made me happy, or my husband bought me a cup of tea in bed.
That's the thing, it can be such small things. I think people think also it needs to be like different things each day, but it doesn't really matter actually what the things are. The trick is that you're training your mind that it knows at the end of the day you're going to ask it, well, what were the best bits, what were the good things? Because then the next day you're literally training your mind to go, if something good happens, you notice and go, oh, I need to remember that. Because when I then do my gratitude practice, so I do one that's it's called Gratitude, like exclamation mark. It's an app, and you can do with photographs. I'm a really visual person, so I was keeping like a handwritten one, but I found actually taking a picture again, it then meant throughout the day I was seeing things and going, and they can be like really silly pictures of, like, you know, walking past a shop window, you know, they're like beautifully designed window, a little snapshot of a picture that you wouldn't normally take, maybe like for yourself to kind of keep, but in that moment it was a little spark of joy.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about taking a photo, but like flower, like if you see a flower that makes you smile, or, you know, maybe not off like sometimes I say, if you see someone in the street and they smile at you, and that, you know, that's quite nice, isn't it? Don't take a photo of them, they might think you're a bit odd.
You might need to get permission.
Yeah, exactly. But no, that's a great idea. That really is. But and I think it's so helpful at just making you realize that there are so many other small things that make up your day, that rather than, you know, fertility issues kind of being this big black cloud over you all the time.
It's focusing, it could be really good as well because I think making changes to your diet, we know it has such a huge impact, but it can take a lot of time and effort. So really showing gratitude to yourself for, like, you know, look at what I've done to support myself today. So even if you're having a week where you feel like, you know, you're feeling a bit lost, you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, you're like, well, actually, I sat down and I made myself a really nutritious lunch, and I've nourished myself, and really being proud of yourself and making those changes as well, because the more you do that, the more likely you are to stick with it and to keep, because then you're training your mind that you're not just getting the reward of the food, you're getting like a little pick me up of like, well done, keep going. And the more you do it, the the easier it becomes. Like I remember when I first started making chia porridge, and I was like, well, I have to remember the day before to put the seeds and put the milk on and put the vanilla and it was always this thing of, oh, whereas now I was like, it doesn't work for me doing in the evening because I don't think about breakfast in the evening. So now I just make it at breakfast the day before. So I make breakfast, 24 hours in advance, put it in the fridge. And every time I've done it, I open the fridge and then it's like this gift from the past me. I'm like, oh, I made chia porridge again. And a tip for chia porridge is to blend it in the morning, and then it makes it all mousse-like and super fluffy.
Because it sucks it all up, doesn't it? It sucks up all the moisture. Chia's a great food, high protein as well, and it's quite yummy, isn't it? I think people fall into two camps. It's a bit like Marmite. People either love it or hate it.
Yeah. And
it kind of it can get stuck in your teeth, can't it? And like all over your washing up sponge and stuff. You're like, chia everywhere.
The whole kitchen is like little bits of frog spawn, but it tastes really good.
It tastes so good, yeah. And actually, I've got a recipe in the book. I'll show it to you for it's actually in the dessert section, but it's a tiramisu chia pudding.
Oh wow, okay, I'm definitely gonna have to make that. That looks absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's really tasty, and it's got a coffee protein powder in, which hasn't got caffeine in as well, so you get that lovely coffee flavor, but you don't have to worry about the caffeine, so that's quite good if you like coffee.
I definitely that I can't have caffeine, or if I sometimes have a cheeky Coke, just probably about once every 3 months, but I have to have it about 10 a.m. because it has such an impact on me. I'm still buzzing by the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, really fancy a Coke, 10 a.m. It's generally when we go to Legoland, it's kind of my treat. If we're at Legoland, I'll have a Coke to see me through the adventure.
To see you through the hell of Legoland.
Yeah, just be like, we can do this. Fantastic. So tell me, we've talked about the different sections in the book. So talk to us a little bit more about other things that people can do in their life, because it's very much about creating that optimal lifestyle, isn't it? And have that balance. So have you got any other tips for us of how to, instead of people seeing it like, oh, it's this massive change, what maybe like a couple of really simple things they could start with just to sort of take that first step on making changes?
Well, first thing to say is that and it goes back to mindset as well, is that rather than really focusing on it as I have to do this for my fertility, this is a fertility diet, it really isn't that at all, because I really hope that people start to make these changes and enjoy them, and then it's seeing it as a lifestyle. So rather than thinking, because if you think I have to do this in order to get pregnant and this is my fertility diet, that becomes quite a negative thing, and you don't want to do it, and it's quite miserable. And actually, this is a lifestyle to maintain forever. So that's the first thing to think about, is that it's not just about getting pregnant. It's about having a healthy pregnancy. Then it's about having a healthy baby. And then it's about having a good experience postpartum and recovering well. And then it's about educating your children on a good diet. And then it's about your longevity. So it's not this thing that you just do for a certain period of time. So I'm definitely not advocating for that. It's hopefully long-term change. And with long-term change, then you can focus on small and consistent changes. So if we think back to my story, it was over many years. So I didn't just do all of this overnight. So like you, I don't eat gluten now, and it's second nature to me. I don't even think about gluten. I don't want it. I know it doesn't serve my body. And so it's not a thing. And people are like, how do you avoid gluten? Like, it's in everything. And I'm like, it really isn't. Like, it's not even a thing. And also people say, how do you avoid sugar? Like, how do you cope? And I don't drink, I mean, I'm not teetotal, but I don't drink alcohol. And that's just a choice, because when I do drink it, I just don't feel great. And again, it's like people, oh my God, how do you not do that? But if you'd have asked me back when I was trying to conceive George to make all of those changes at once, I would have gone mental, because because I used to love Builder's tea. So I'd have Builder's tea with lots of milk. Not lots of milk, but it would have milk in it. I liked milk, so I had that on my cereal and things. I loved cheese. So and my cereal was probably wheat based. I love toast. I like, so if someone had said to me, right, you have to get rid of gluten now, and you have to get rid of dairy now, and you can't have sugar, and you can't drink alcohol, I would have been like, that is insane. You are mental. And so, it's about doing things in small increments. And if this is a lifestyle that you're going to maintain forever, you don't have to suddenly do it all at once. And so think about, okay, what change do I want to make today? So it might be, rather than taking stuff out, it might be, okay, I want to start with adding things in. So I want to start with adding vegetables in, because I don't eat many vegetables. And so how can I have vegetables at breakfast? And so you might think to yourself, okay, instead of having cereal, I'm going to have eggs for breakfast. And then with those eggs, I can saute some greens, or I can just put a big pile of salad leaves and a nice dressing. So, so rather than focusing on that deprivation, you're focusing on abundance. And then at lunch, you could have your normal lunch. So if it is a sandwich, okay, I'm still going to have a sandwich, but on the side, I will have a big side salad. And then at dinner, okay, I like pasta, I'm having pasta. But I'm also going to have some baked broccoli, and so you think about how you can make and master that change first. And then once you're away doing that and you've got used to that, maybe you've done it for a few weeks, then think about the next thing. And I think that is the best way that you can start making changes to your diet. And it might be that you want to eat less bread, and you want to kind of move away from more ultra processed type foods, and so maybe when you've mastered the veggies, you could think, okay, I'm not going to have that bread at lunch. Instead, I'm going to expand my salad, and so with that salad that I'm used to eating now, I'm going to add in some salmon or some roasted chicken, and slowly that way you can really master it without it being a big deal, without it being this like, right, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, the whole alphabet in one go, because that's no fun for anyone. Trying to put your whole diet upside down in one go is miserable, because you're trying to change too much and you're asking too much of yourself as well, especially as we're so busy. So I think that is the best advice I can give, is baby steps, really nailing one thing before you move on to the next thing, and looking for alternatives and setting yourself up for success as well. So if you want to eat more veggies, then how are you going to do that? Okay, well, maybe you'll get this book, because there's a whole veggie section, and maybe you'll think about different vegetables to have, and then maybe you'll get some for your freezer, so you've got some in the freezer, because nowadays you can get ready chopped and prepared. So if you're a really busy person, you can buy those frozen, so you can get like a Mediterranean medley, or you can get an Asian kind of medley if you want to make that kind of food. So really set yourself up for that success. Prep stuff on the weekend, so maybe on a Sunday think, okay, well, I want to have more veggies as a snack, so I'm going to chop up some carrots and things and put them in individual pots in the fridge, and so that you're ready to go, and that it becomes easy. Because when things are difficult, or when life gets in the way, which it will do, we've already prepped ourselves for success. So that's another helpful thing that you can do.
I love that, because I think that's why it's so easy for us to reach to processed packaged foods, because it's like, individually little wrapped things that you can grab. Whereas if you've prepared something that's ready to go. I remember changing from that. I'd always have a Snickers bar when I was younger. It'd be like, get hungry about 11 o'clock, and I'd be like, because I was so hungry, a chocolate bar wasn't fulfilling enough, but a Snickers, obviously, it had the nuts in, so it was slightly more. And then I realized it was like, actually, you could have like a little bag of almonds, and have, again, so instead of having the chocolate and the sugar and everything, and then not really feeling like lunch, so then I'd be like, oh, now I can work through lunch and have a later lunch, and then have a later dinner, and then eating at bedtime, and all the decisions you make impact your body and when you're eating and your moods and everything. So I love that. Thank you so much, and it's making me, one, incredibly hungry, and two, really thinking about, I think that's the thing for me, is I've got back into the habit of doing like loads of salads at the minute, which is great in the summer, but then when it starts getting cold again, it's finding ways, yeah, to bring the veggies in, because it's like, oh, I don't, and when it's warm I always feel like a salad, whereas if it's cold I'm like, oh, I want something warmer. So having like adding hot lentils, warm lentils to a salad, and getting the pre-made lentil bags is something
Yeah.
that I love. Again,
Yes.
I don't have to think about it, I don't have to cook, I can just warm them up. But
Yeah.
it's, for me, that kind of step really helps me, that it's a staple in my larder that's just always there. I
Yeah.
don't need to really think about it, it's lined up, I can do that.
Yeah, definitely, exactly. And thinking also in winter, like you said, with the veggies, baking veggies is so nice. Like, because you can
Yeah.
put a little knob of butter if you like, if you have butter, or you could put some coconut. So I like to use flavorless coconut oil a lot, just because I don't want that coconut flavor. And so I'll put a little bit of that in. I'll put some garlic salt in, maybe with some broccoli or some sweet potato, and just bake it. And you don't, it's very quick prep. You just, whack it in the baking tin, and then it's in the oven for 20 minutes while you're getting on with something else, and then it comes out and it's so delicious. Like, baked broccoli is really good, and so is baked cauliflower. I don't know if you've ever done that, but again, rather than steaming it or boiling it, of course that's going to be really gross and miserable to eat, but
They remind you of school dinners. But yeah,
yeah.
baked broccoli, like if
Oh
it gets the crunch on it.
yeah, it gets that lovely char, like a little bit of char. Obviously we don't want too much char, but I've got in the book one of my favorite recipes, which I add to a lot of salads actually, is curried cauliflower with almonds. That's
Ooh,
really tasty.
nice.
It doesn't take long. And this chili, garlic and chili tender stem broccoli. So
Wow.
again, that's baked I think it's baked, or is it sauteed? Oh no, saute it, and then you just add a really nice sauce. Again, like, and this book is full of dressings as well, because you can add a dressing to things, because that will give you some healthy fats, but also it makes your food taste good. So fat will make your food taste good, so it makes the veggies taste good. So we're focusing on flavor as well. Like, flavor is really key, because otherwise your food won't taste nice. So
If you make something it doesn't taste nice, you're not going to make it again. You need to
no,
be.
you won't. Exactly. And also, going back to your point about with the Snickers bar again, rather than saying to yourself, I can't have that Snickers bar, you either say, I can have it and I choose not to have it, or say to yourself, I'll have it once I've eaten the almond, or whatever, a healthy snack. So, or you might have a boiled egg, that's a great healthy snack, and you could dip it into some hummus and have some carrot sticks. And then you won't, when you finish that, you actually probably be too full for the Snickers anyway.
Yeah.
So, it's about prioritizing the nutrient-rich foods for your health as much as for your fertility, and then having that as an afterthought. More than often than not, you won't find you need it once you've eaten what you should be eating, a nice, nutritious and healthy meal that you actually wanted to eat. It's just in that moment you might be feeling a bit stressed or tired or whatever.
Fantastic. So where can people find you, and where can they buy your book?
So I'm quite active on Instagram. So I've got my, I share recipes on there. I also do this feature called Cooking and Conversation once a week, where I have a guest and we cook together. And that's quite a fun thing to watch, because I'll show you how to make one of my recipes. I also have a free community on Facebook, and that's called the Fertility Kitchen community. So that's a community for anyone to come in. I'm in there. I do cooking demos and things like that in there. So feel free to join that. And my book is available on Amazon and from all good bookshops.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been lovely to chat to you. And hopefully, if people are listening and they haven't tried any of these recipes, they just get a little bit of inspiration to go and try. And those of you who are really interested in diet, definitely check out Charlotte's Instagram channel and get the book. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great chatting.
Thank you so much for listening. Please do subscribe to the channel to be the first to know when a new episode comes live. And if you're interested in finding out more about my work on mindset and supporting your emotional health during fertility, please go to my website, embracefertility.co.uk, and sign up for my latest free class. You can also follow me on Instagram at Embrace Fertility.